Hi, and welcome to this next tutorial about Zbrush. I just wanted to cover Dynamesh, how to use it, when to use it, and why you would use it. So the easiest way to get started with Dynamesh is to hit the comma key, go to Projects, and select the Dynawax or Dynamesh or Dynawax 128, Dynawax 64, Dynasphere 64. And what these numbers actually mean is the resolution of Dynamesh. So in this case, it's going to start out with Dynamesh at a resolution of 128, which is the default setting. So I'm going to go ahead and open this, and I'm going to say no. It's going to open up a new project. So I have a different document setting, which can be set up here. So it's actually changed my document setting to this project setting, and it's turned on perspective. You can turn that off right here so that you see your model in a more orthographic view without perspective. It also automatically added symmetry. And just off the top of the head, off the top of the bat, I can just begin sculpting, no problem, here, as you can see. Now, if I go ahead and grab a snake sphere, I can pull that out, something like that. Or I can go to a snake hook and grab something like this. Now, this is the purpose of Dynamesh. If you see these lines and triangles and these empty spaces, what is happening is faces are getting crossed over each other, and they're creating back faces. And if you don't have your double sided turned on, you won't see your back faces. So this is a problem because we've stretched the topology, and if we press Control F, or Shift F, sorry, here we can see how our geometry has gone from this nice even squares and triangles to these really stretched out versions. And this is what Dynamesh is for. So really Dynamesh is for when you're just beginning to block your model out. You don't know what your shape is going to be, and you don't want to have to worry about topology. So where do we find Dynamesh? The controls for Dynamesh are under Geometry in our tool palette, and then we just click on Dynamesh, and as you can see, it's already active because we opened up a Dynamesh project, and its resolution is set to 128. We've got a blur of 2. I usually set that down, and notice as soon as I turned that down, it has re-dynameshed my model. So that means it's given me new topology based on the shape that I created. And now I no longer have those holes. I can turn off double, and I don't have to worry about that. But as we carry on and continue sculpting, we can see we have new ones. So now how do we remesh this model? You don't have to actually keep going back here. All you have to do is hold down Control and drag a mask anywhere outside of the model. And when you do that, the model is automatically remeshed. Then you just carry on sculpting, and there you go. Okay, that's looking really cool. I like that, so we just Control, drag, and there it is. And you can continue sculpting and dynameshing. Where you want to finish, where you don't want to continue dynameshing, or when you want to stop, is when you found the shape that you're looking for and you want to start going into details, because Dynamesh does not do well with high level details, and you can see what I'm talking about right here. So if I just start drawing this, I'm going to turn off my wireframe mode or polyframe mode with a Shift F, and I'm going to draw some like really fine detail here, and in this case it's kept it, but you can see it's lost some of the strokes, and that's because of the resolution that we're at. So if you really want to keep your resolution, you need to turn it up. Okay, so say if I go in here and just really small, maybe even go some more, whoop, snake hook, and you'll notice here, even though I've Dynameshed it, whoop, you'll see that some of the fine detail that I did has been smoothed out. And so if I want to, I can go up to 256, whoop, and begin drawing again. So maybe I'll go, let's get something interesting, an interesting brush. Or let me show you something else. So we can add like high poly models here. We can go and get some industrial parts, maybe, and there, like there. And there we go. But you've noticed that the sharp edges that those insert mesh brushes that I added in got attached to the model, which is great, but they lost their sharp edges. And so even if I go to, let's take it up to now 512. Now if you change your resolution and you go to do something, or you go to remesh your model, it won't do anything right away. You need to actually add more pieces to it. So maybe I'll add something like this, and there, and there, and there. Now we have a much denser model. We have sharper edges. They're not exactly the way that we wanted them or the way that they were originally designed, but they're really close. But our model is now 1.856 million polygons, so it's very, very heavy, and that's where you need to be careful, because if you go up to 1024 or 2048, you're suddenly dealing with 8 to 20 million polys for a model. And so you need to be careful. Another thing you need to consider is size. So when I opened this project, it was already created. It's a pre-made project that comes with Pixelogic. But say if you have your own model and you're suddenly getting something, let's see, I don't know, let's try. So if I go over here where I have my tool palette and I can just drop in a new tool, I can always jump back to that model, no problem, just by switching these tools here. But now you just take this model and scale it up, scale it up, scale it up, scale it up, and zoom out. And now let me try to Dynamesh this. Now you'll notice that even though I'm at 128 resolution, I came out with 2.598 million polys. And a lot of people, it's hard it took me a long time to figure this out. Like, that size matters in Zbrush. And for a long time I was under the misinformed view that there was no scale in Zbrush. There is scale. We can see our size here, our dimensions. We can actually go to Z plugin. I actually have a custom layout here, so I've got a lot of extra menus that you wouldn't see, but Z plugin is one of them. And if we go to Scale Master and check our scales, I'm going to set that to centimeters, slider just a subs tool. Okay, so this is 7 centimeters by 6 by 1.8 in the Z right here. So scale matters, and if you're ever working with it also works oppositely the other way. So if I go to W and I go scale, 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 and I go to F, now we have this really tiny model, which is a lot smaller than what we started out with. Now what happens when I go to Dynamesh this model? I'm going to turn it off real quick, turn blur, and then I'm going to Dynamesh this again. And now suddenly we are left with this. And that's because of scale. Even though both times I Dynamesh the model at 128 resolution, the size of the model matters a lot to how Zbrush calculates this Dynamesh algorithm. How do we fix that? Like, I used to come across models where I was like, oh my gosh, why is this like Dynameshing like really horribly, or why are there like 20 million polys if I Dynamesh at lowest resolution? And then realized, oh, it is the size in Zbrush world. So you might need to sometimes change the size of your object while you're performing Dynamesh, just so that you can get it a good Dynamesh. And how you make sure that the object itself is the right scale for Zbrush to use Dynamesh correctly is you need to go to deformation, and at the top there's unify. If I hit unify, now our model is actually sort of 1-to-1 scale for Zbrush. Now if I step back and I'm going to hit unify again, just because I don't know what scale I was at, and now I'm going to go to geometry and turn off Dynamesh, and I'm going to turn it back on, and we went from 2.2 million polys down to 10,000. And this is actually the proper way of how 128 resolution Dynamesh should look. 2.598 million. So let's turn this up to 512. I generally stay within powers of 2, but you can turn this to any number. You don't need any specific numbers. I'm also going to turn on polish and Dynamesh. And now we've got 157 active points, 157,000 active points. We also have a much sharper model. With Shift F, I'm able to turn off my polyframe, and this is actually a solid sculptable model. So that's another sort of pointer about using Dynamesh. But like I said, you use Dynamesh when you're shaping things out, when you're trying to still create the geometry. Dynamesh is also great for like doing hard surface. So if I go over here and turn this to a slice curve, and I go here and I tap that and tap that, and then so now it's created a really sharp, turn on my double, really sharp cut in the model. By the way, I'm hitting Control and Shift, and then I can solo different poly groups. So these are poly groups when you see different colors. And then I can also hit Control Shift again and turn this to a trim curve. And when I do that, turn on my symmetry, and didn't do it symmetrically, but what's really nice about this, and this is the way a lot of hard surface modelers work, is it gives you a polygrouped cut, and you get really nice. There you go. So if you read Dynamesh, it will remove your polygroups unless you say groups here, multi-groups Dynamesh. So it'll remesh this group, then it'll remesh this group. So I'm going to do a trim curve again. The trim curve works in a way that the shadow facing side is where the cut will be. And there you go. And then if I don't know why it didn't do the symmetry, but if I want that symmetry, I go back to the deformation palette, tab, and same place where the Unify is, and then I go to Mirror, and then I go to Geometry, and I go to Modify Topology, and I go Mirror and Weld. And now I'm actually back to my previous model. So if I go this way and go Mirror and Weld, and now I've got like this thing that I've created, which is really cool. So Dynamesh is great for blocking out. It's great for hard surface. It's great when you're just sort of figuring out like what are you going to do with the model, what is the shape, or you're trying to start from a sphere and you're going to you're trying to make a portrait or something like that, or as I mentioned, hard surface mech design, all that good stuff. Dynamesh is like extremely useful. It took me a long time to sort of get my head around, okay, how to use it, when to use it, why do I use it. It's just sort of, and it's great if you're ever working with, say, in the Z plugin, and you add text or SVGs, and they come in with really crazy triangulated mesh that's almost unusable, and Dynamesh is the one that saves the day. But remember to unify the model before you start doing anything, or if you see any like crazy results that come out. The other thing I wanted to mention about Dynamesh is that we do have a Dynamesh plugin that comes with Zbrush. It's Dynamesh Master. And this is cool because it kind of helps us control our number of polys. So we can say, I have the hot buttons up here, but I can say, oh, I want 100,000 poly Dynamesh, and boom, there we go. Or wait, no, I want a 1.7 million poly Dynamesh, and boom, there we go. So that's really handy because you can actually control the number if you don't sort of want to work with the Dynamesh resolution here. Sub projection is really tricky and not something that I would work with too much unless you're really working with high level detail models, which I'm sure by the time you get to that point you'll know exactly how to use sub projection. Now there's a few other buttons down here, which is like add, sub, and create shell. Create shell is really interesting because it creates a hollow model for you. So say you want a 3D print, and but you don't want this to be a solid piece of print because it's going to take up like all your resin. So what you'll do is you need to create a small hole in here, and we're going to add a pen, say cylinder here, and just go W, let's select the cylinder, scroll, scale that down, say we want our hole right here, and or let's say for design purposes we actually want it at the back, so I'm going to hold shift and constrain my rotation. I'm going to move it right here, and then here I'm going to put this as a subtract, that is a start, Dynamesh, and select that. Going to merge down. Okay, so now because I set that to subtract before I merged it, I can turn that on, this add-on. You'll notice that this mesh is white, and what that is telling ZBrush, like, hey, this mesh is a subtraction from this mesh. Now if I go back here and I go to create shell, it's going to take a minute because this is a pretty dense mesh. What it's doing is it's actually looking at the boundaries of the model. It's creating a thickness of 4, so it'll go 4 in, and then the entire inside of this model will be empty with a hole. We're going to wait for that to respond. And there we go. Now we have a model that has a hole in it, and it's hollow. And the hollowness, if I just turn this off and go that was not the way to do that. I'm going to go back to my select rectangle. I'm holding Control, Shift, and Alt just to hide part of the model. And now I can see inside the model I've created a perfectly hollow model. Final, most important reason that you'd use Dynamesh, and this again is for 3D printing. I mean, there's tons of millions of reasons why you'd use Dynamesh, but one of the big ones is the Dynamesh automatically seals your model. So besides creating a shell and a hole the way I just did, anytime you Dynamesh a model, it completely wraps the model. So there are no holes, no empty geometry in that. So it's actually ready for 3D printing. Of course, after it's been Dynameshed, then you have to go to Dynamesh Master, go to Preprocess Current, and then you would do, which is sort of like a way of ZBrush saying, hey, this is a good model. It's analyzing the mesh. You see it's processing there. And then you can go to Decimate Current, and then that's what these buttons up here are for me. They're hot buttons to, say I want to decimate at 250, 20K, 35K, 75K, 150, 250K, or I can set a custom number. So depending on your printer, the 3D printer you're using, you might need to stay within a certain polys when you create your STL, which can also be done here in ZBrush. Okay, so and there it is. So now it's pre-processed. I can say, okay, decimate current, let's say 250K. And now this model is decimated, and for a 3D printer, it is watertight That means every bit of space, each of the polys are connected, welded. There's no way for it to go forward, or for it to, you won't have any problems. So from here, I would go to see 3D Print Hub, and I'd export an STL. That would be ready for a 3D printer to use. So that's it. Kind of like Dynamesh in a nutshell, I guess. There's more. I mean, this goes way, way deeper. But just to get people over the idea that it's about scale of your model, plus the resolution. So notice, by the way, I set that to 1.7 million and set my. Also, if you're Dynameshing and you're done, don't forget to turn it off, because you could be like masking something and it'll re-dynamesh the model. Like, watch, you know, and then the work that you've done is gone, right? So that's it. Hope this helped someone somewhere out there. Stay safe, stay healthy. Catch you on the flip side.